Hey, what is going on, guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys my opinion on the best junglers for patch 6.3. So first up is going to be Papi. Now, even though Papi did get nerfed this patch, I do still think she's a really good pick for solo queue for either top lane, for jungle, or for support. Jungle Papi is quite good in my opinion because she's got great clear speeds in the jungle with her AoE damage from her Q, and she's also got the shield, so she does stay pretty healthy as well. She's got really low cooldown abilities on her Q and on her E. Once you do get 40% CDR on Papi, her Q's on a 2 or 3 second cooldown and her E is on 7 or 8 seconds, so you can just spam those out a lot in team fights. And because Papi has high base damage on both of those abilities, you can just get out so much damage while still being really tanky. I usually only do build one AD item on Papi, usually Sterak's, and then after that I just go full tank, and you can still chunk a squishy target's health bar to below half HP with just 2 abilities, so that's pretty crazy. She also does have really good CC with her E and with her ultimate, and her ultimate does provide some of the best disengage in the game. In my opinion, she is also pretty easy to play as well. The only thing you really need to get down when you're playing as Papi is just lining up your E, because you want to always make sure that you can hit that up against the wall so you can get the stun, and I find that when I'm playing her, sometimes I'm not able to do that. So when you are playing Papi, just make sure you try to hit your E up against the wall, try to line it up so you do hit the wall, and therefore you will get the stun. And one con to Papi though is that she does have weaker early game gank, since she doesn't have a gap closer, or she doesn't have a long range crowd control ability. You kind of have to get behind your opponent when you're ganking as Papi to knock them back into your team, and if the laner's like halfway pushed out, then your gank may not be successful, but if he's pushed all the way to the tower, then she can still gank effectively. Next up, I have Elise. Being one of the stronger early game junglers, Elise is really good in this meta right now. You can basically win the game in the first 10 minutes with Elise as long as you can get a few successful ganks off. Her cocoon is a 1.5 second stun, so if you can hit that on the enemy laner, you're basically guaranteed to burn their flash in the early game, and if they don't have flash, then you've basically just netted yourself a free kill right there. So just make sure that you do go aggressive in the early game as Elise, because if you don't, then you will get outskilled by most of the other junglers in the game. She's got really good clear speeds as well. She's got 4 damaging abilities, 2 in human form and 2 in spider form, so that just allows her to clear the jungle a lot faster than most of the other junglers. She's got insane tower diving ability as well. I want to say she's the best tower diving jungler in the game just due to her repel. She can tank a few tower shots, and just because of her repel, she can get out of that situation and just pick up a free kill. So when you are playing Elise, just look for tower dives if the enemy laners are low, because it's just really easy to do it as long as you can hit your cocoon, and I don't see enough Elise players go for tower dives in the early game. Her dueling potential is also really good as long as she can get the jump on her opponent and she can hit the cocoon. If she does that, she's basically guaranteed to win the duel, since the enemy jungler really can't trade back against Elise just due to the raw damage that she does have in her kit. She's an AP bruiser too, so when I play Elise, I like to go Runics, and then after that I go Rylai's. I might even build another damage item after that, but usually Runics and Rylai's are core on her, and then after that it just depends on the situation. You can go tank after that, or you can go full AP Elise and you can just blow up the enemy squishies. You can one-shot the enemy AD carry really easily if you can hit your cocoon on her. So if your team does lack damage, let's say you've got a tanky top and you've got a tanky support, then playing AP Elise is definitely viable for sure. And one contour though is that she is harder to play in my opinion than a lot of the other junglers, just because she does heavily rely on hitting her cocoon to pull off successful ganks in the early game. Next on my list, I have Nidalee. So like Elise, I do think that Nidalee is a bit harder to play, but she is a very rewarding champion if she can be played correctly. Her early game is one of the best in the game. As long as she can hit her spear when she does go for ganks, then she can just snowball the early game out of control. The amount of damage that you can do with Nidalee in the early game is quite good if you do hit your spear, because if you hit your spear, then you can follow that up with a lot of damage in Cougar form. So I'd say that if you haven't played Nidalee a lot, then play her in normal games before heading into ranked, because she is a lot harder to play, but if you can play her to her fullest potential, then she can be a great pick for solo queue. She's got the heal on her E too, so that just allows her to keep her teammates really healthy in mid to late game team fights, and you can also put that on your AD carry to give them an attack speed steroid, so don't be afraid to do that in mid to late game team fights or when you are pushing down towers. She also does get the vision with her W, so when I'm playing Nidalee, I like to go into the enemy's jungle whenever I can, and I plant my W down, so if the enemy does walk over it, I'll know where they are, so make sure that you do that when you are playing as Nidalee. She does have really strong mobility as well. She does get the movement speed whenever she's moving through brushes, and she also has her pounce in Cougar form, so it just allows her to get around the map really quickly. A few cons to Nid though is that she's very squishy, and I also see a lot of Nidalee players, they hit their spear and then they just automatically think that they need to jump in, and they just end up getting themselves killed. So you really do have to judge when the right time is to go in as Nidalee, and I really do think that that is what differentiates an average Nidalee player to a really good Nidalee player, because an average Nid, they'll just hit their spear and then they'll jump in right away, even if it's like a 1v4 or something like that, whereas a really good Nidalee player will judge when the right time is to jump in. And she is also very skill shot reliant, of course, as well, because her Q is her main ability, and if she can't hit that, then she is going to be a lot weaker than most of the other jungler picks. Next on my list, I have Graves. So right now, Graves is pretty much a pick or ban for solo queue. If he isn't banned, then definitely look to pick him. He's got really good clear speeds in the jungle, and he also doesn't take any damage from the creeps, just due to the mechanic he has with his auto attacks. Whenever he auto attacks the enemy creep, if you didn't know, he'll knock them back, so that just allows him to kite around the creeps really easily, and it just allows him to pretty much stay at full HP the whole time that he's farming the jungle. He's also got a great mid to late game, one of the best for any jungler in the game. He just does an insane amount of burst damage. He's also got the gap closer on his E, which allows him to stay pretty safe in those team fights, and it just allows him to dodge enemy CC abilities like Thresh Hooks and Morgana Binds. His W also completely blinds the enemies now, so that's also a really strong part of his kit. And one con to Graves though is that his ganks in the early game aren't the best, since he doesn't have any strong CC in his kit. And to round out my top 5 for this patch, I have AP Udyr. So if I were to tell you at the end of last season that AP Udyr would have the highest win rate for any champion in the game, you'd probably think I'm joking, but I'm not, because right now he's got a 58% win rate, which is the highest for any jungler or any champion in the game for that matter. The Runick's Echo item just synergizes really well with him. He doesn't run into mana problems when clearing the jungle now due to that item, and he can hand blue over to his mid laner or anybody who needs it whenever he wants, just since he's going to be getting a lot of mana regen with the Runick's Echo. And the item also synergizes really well with his W and his ultimate, since both of those abilities scale off of AP. He's got the best clear speeds in the jungle for any jungler, in my opinion as well. You can just mow through the jungle with him, and you also don't take a lot of damage either, since his W is on like a 4-second cooldown, so you'll be getting that shield up every few seconds, and you'll also be getting lifesteal from your W, so it just allows him to stay really healthy in the jungle. He's one of the better dueling junglers in the game too, and he's an AP bruiser, so what I like to go on Udyr is Runick's Echo, Iceborne Gauntlet, and then after that I'll probably go tank. I might even build like an Abyssal Scepter, or I might build one more AP item, but usually you don't want to go full AP Udyr, because then you're going to be really squishy in mid to late game team fights. Just building those 2 main AP items is what I would do on him. And he's also pretty simple to play. He really doesn't have a hard kit. All you gotta do basically in mid to late game team fights is run in with your E, stun them, go into your Phoenix stance, and then just get a lot of damage off that way. So he is one of the easier junglers to play, that's for sure. And a few cons to Udyr though is that he can get kited pretty easily, since he does not have a gap closer, and he is also pretty weak if he does fall behind. So first up on the honorable mentions, I have Mundo. I still think that Mundo is a really good pick for solo queue, even though he did get nerfed. His late game is still absolutely crazy. He also doesn't have too bad of an early game either, so if you are still looking for a strong tank and he isn't banned, then definitely still look to pick Mundo. Next up I have Fiddlestick. So right now I think Fiddlesticks is really underrated. I do think that he is one of the better junglers in the game, so if you haven't tried him out, definitely look to do it. The amount of AoE damage that you can put out in a team fight with Fiddle is pretty crazy with his ultimate, and he also does provide really good CC with his Q and with his E, so if you're looking for another good Runic Echo jungler, then definitely look to play Fiddle. Next up I have Jax. So Jax is one of the only Devourer junglers that is still pretty strong right now. I do think that he is a really good champion because once you get to mid game as Jax and you do get your items stacked, then you can just deal so much damage in team fights, and if you do end up getting to late game, then you can just single-handedly carry a game as Jax. So if you're looking for another good damage jungler, then I would play Jax. Next on the honorable mentions, I have Rek Sai. So Rek Sai is also pretty good in this meta right now, just due to the fact that her early game is one of the stronger ones for a jungler. She does fall off a little bit in mid to late game though, and if she doesn't get good ganks off in the early game, then she is going to be a little bit weaker, just due to the fact that she doesn't have any strong AoE CC, or she doesn't have the best team fight present. So just make sure that when you are playing her, that you do gank effectively in the early game. Next up I have Fizz. So Fizz is also another good Runic Echo jungler. If you are looking for a good assassin that builds that item, I would definitely look to pick him up in the jungle. His pre-6 ganks aren't the best, but once he does hit level 6, then his ganks are really strong with his ultimate. He's just a really good champion either for mid or for jungle right now. Next up I have Amumu. So Amumu is a really versatile jungler. You can either go full tank Amumu, you can go bruiser Amumu, or you can go full AP Amumu depending on the situation. So I just really like that you have a lot of options when you are playing him. He is one of the better teamfight junglers in the game though, that's for sure, since his ultimate is that large AoE snare, and he also does have good engage with his Q. And to round out the honorable mentions for this patch, I have Rammus. So Rammus is a great pick if the enemy team does lock an assassin in the mid lane, or if they do have a heavy AD comp. I wouldn't pick him if they do have a few AP champions though, since he's not going to be able to build that armor, and then he's not going to be able to get a lot of free AD from his passive. So pick him if the enemy team does have a few AD, but otherwise I would pick one of the other junglers on my list. So that is going to be it for this video, guys. If you did enjoy, then be sure to drop a like and subscribe if you have not already. So thanks for watching, guys. Have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.